So let me just make sure that I see us on camera as well so we can actually read out questions. Good morning, everybody, and good evening for those in the US or Canada. I want to welcome this beautiful lady, Teisha Casasanta. I'm going to get you to introduce yourself in a minute, but I want to give a bit of a background story to those of you watching us here. Teisha is actually in our Facebook group under the Facebook name Teacher. So some of you might have already noticed a few of her comments, which are always very positive, very supportive. And that's why Teisha actually stood out for me. And we had a bit of a chat behind the camera. And we decided to have a Zoom call together a couple of days ago. And instantly we had so many connections and so many parallels that I decided, Teisha, I need to get you in front of camera for our audience, for our group here, Loving Life After Loss, and chat a little bit about our parallels, about our background stories. And I am so pumped that you're taking an hour out of your time to chat to us today. And the topic that we have chosen for today is post-traumatic growth. And I am absolutely pumped about this topic. But before we go there, I'm going to get Teisha to introduce herself to our audience. Can you say a little bit about you, Teisha? Who are you and how did you get into Loving Love After Loss?
Okay, I've been a funeral director for 22 years and transitioned into becoming a grief coach a year ago. And, you know, it's just all about helping people. You and I do have so many parallels. The first name of my business was Life After Loss. And of course, I was attracted to the name of your group because, you know, living after loss. And then I couldn't believe you when you dropped your hashtag as Up Spiral. And the name of what I ended up naming my business is Upward Spiral Grief Coaching.
I love it. I absolutely love it.
We had so many connections. And I joined your group, and it is a lovely group of so many beautiful people who express themselves with so much heart and love. And your live videos, you counsel your members daily, you hold their hand, and you help so many people, even as a listener who isn't actively going through the grief process. When I hear you speak, it inspires me so much. And
thank you so much.
Good, because what I do is along the lines of what you are telling people. The guidance that you're giving to your friends is so much along the line of what I do. And I think it's so important for that type of support to be out there for the bereaved.
Thank you so much for pointing that out, because I think that is really the focus that we both have, as in really the helping or the healing, you know. And I always say that, and people might get a bit over it by now, but I have to highlight it over and over again. There are way too many grief groups out there who focus on the suffering and keeping people stuck in that space rather than actually helping them in the healing. But before we go further into that topic, I'd really love to know, Teisha, how did you actually get into the funeral industry? Did you experience a loss before that, and did that trigger it, or were you drawn to that industry for different reasons? How did you start or get into the funeral industry in the first place?
Well, that was a very long time ago, and it was actually a high school class project where
That's unexpected, because I didn't ask you that question before.
One of the assignments that our English teacher gave to us was to, as a senior in high school, to map out the next 5 years of our life and where we're going to go to college, what we're going to study, what we're going to do, what field we're going to get into, etc. And I was just at a loss. I really wasn't sure of what I wanted to do. I was interested in arts. I paint, I draw, I love photography. And I sort of thought about that. But when I was in high school, I had the long black hair and dressed in black all the time. And I was, really pondering what to do. And the teacher came by and she says, just be a mortician. And I thought,
wow.
yeah. Well, we had also done one of those assessment tests that categorizes you into different professions that you may be good at.
Mm-hmm.
And a mortician had come up on that list, and she knew that. So, but she was also somewhat teasing me, and I thought, I don't know anything about this profession. In a nice way, yeah.
Okay.
And yeah, so I started doing some research on the funeral industry, and I ended up writing out a 5-year plan of, at the time I was living in Virginia in the US, and the mortuary school was here in Atlanta, Georgia, where I live now.
Yeah.
However, I didn't exactly follow the plan exactly. First, I went to college to do art, and this was in the late 90s, and everything was transitioning into digital art. Photoshop was the newest thing, and manipulation of photographs, and I just didn't want to be behind a computer. I wanted a hands-on job. And the whole curriculum just went over to computer graphics, and I just didn't want to do that. I didn't want to be in marketing or advertising. So
it's funny that you say that. Sorry to interrupt you quickly, because when this teacher suggested to be a mortician, I thought, well, if you're wearing black all the time and if you tease people by the cliche of their clothing or whatever, or appearance, then wearing black all the time, mortician, or working in advertising. And now you mentioned that, actually, because I worked in advertising for like 10 plus years, and one of my friends is actually watching right now, and I was in the advertising college with her. Isa, hi, nice to have you here. And it's really funny, like when you wore grey, that was like the multicolored of advertising, It's like, and I wore black for many years due to that reason. So yeah, it's really funny that you say that. And for everyone, when you stalk Teisha's Facebook profile, which I did because I had to find a photo for this very event, you can certainly tell that you are into art and into photography when you look through your profile pictures. I'm like, oh yeah, it really stands out. I love it.
Yeah, that's always a passion of mine and something I continually do. So anyway, I went to a funeral home and asked for a job. And it sounds really easy, but that's the way the doors opened for me. They did give me a job, and then they offered me an apprenticeship, and I did the apprenticeship. And the first body that I prepared, I was so nervous. It was my very first. I did the embalming, the hair, the makeup, the nails, the presentation of this beautiful woman. And I was in the back room, and my supervisor came out, and he said, real serious, he said, "Teisha, the family wants to talk to you." And I thought, oh, this isn't going to be good. And he brought me out, and they had tears in their eyes. And they said that their mother hadn't looked that good in years. And I brought her back to when she looked healthy, and that's exactly the way they wanted to remember her. And they just gave me the biggest embrace. And I thought, that feeling I've never had before. I've never had that type of pride in anything.
That is so beautiful.
And I knew that was where I belonged. And working with the families, as well as preparation of the decedents, because that's where the art came in. I wanted to sort of work in the back and do reconstruction for people that died of trauma. And because there's a lot of sculpting involved, and a lot of color theory and cosmetics and so forth. But once I was in front of the people, I had a connection that I wanted to continue having. And so it was just a beautiful marriage of being able to do the physical work of the job, but also being able to do the psychological part of the job, and really being able to help people.
Yeah.
I had no
So
idea that
how much connection did you actually have? Was it part of the job, or was it just something that you automatically did because it was in your nature to connect to the family and help them through that, or was it part of your job anyway?
Well, yeah, as part of the job, absolutely, to sit with the
Mm.
family and gather information. But
Yeah.
I found that I was a natural for it.
Mm.
I
It
just
seems like
love
it.
I just love talking to families
Yeah.
about their loved one and making them feel at ease in a
Yeah.
very uncomfortable situation, getting them
Yeah.
to
That's so
laugh.
beautiful.
Yeah, and
Well,
the
before
more,
I go to the next question, Tisha, I just quickly want to say hi to a few people here. There's a few people that have joined in. Heather, Terry, the usual suspects. I absolutely love it. Hello, lovely ladies. Catherine is watching. Hi, Catherine. Luna, Lisa, everyone. That's my sister. I'm always super happy when I see her tune in live from Austria because it's quite late over there now. It's already midnight. Um, Lisa Livingston, hello. Lovely to see you here. Isa, thank you so much. That's really lovely. How, hey, I can't say. Okay, bless your morticians. Thank you, lovely. So, P.S. My grandmother did people's hair for morticians, lived in Newport News for a little while. How lovely is that? That's really nice to know. Um, Andre, I'm not really sure what you mean. I'm trying to access this but can't. When you comment on that, you're obviously watching the live, so I'm not really sure what you're trying to access. If you could let me know, then I can maybe help you through this. Hi, Selena. Um, Peter, back to you. I want to also know, as in, when you, so for how many years did you do that, to work in a funeral home?
22 years.
Wow. So at what stage in your journey did the coaching come in? At what stage did you go like, I really want to go into the coaching world and add that to my repertoire? Or, you know, where did you do then the split to go like, okay, I'm done with the funeral industry. I'm just going to tell me a little bit about that. Where did it come in and when did you do the transition from the funeral home to leave that after 22 years and then go into coaching? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, I can. I do have a medical condition that I
Mm-hmm.
have struggled with for since I was 20 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And during the years, it would get really, really bad, and I would have to have
Yeah.
surgery and go out on
Mm-hmm.
leave. And
Mm-hmm.
then I'd get better. But it was the severity of it became very bad in, let's see, February of 2019. It got really,
Mm-hmm.
really bad. And my doctor sort of told me, you just can't go on anymore. You just can't keep pushing yourself
Mm-hmm.
and going the way that you are. And I recommend that you go on disability. So
Mm-hmm.
I had to, and it was a good thing, Marie. I had to realize that it was time for me to take care of myself.
Mm-hmm.
That through all of this and how I kept pushing on and putting other people first through all of the years, I needed to take a step back and reevaluate my own health and my own well-being.
Yeah.
So I resigned and applied for disability. And
Mm-hmm.
in the interim, while I was waiting for the disability, I got a job doing selling life insurance,
Mm-hmm.
working from home. And I'm not a salesperson at all. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I'm just not cut out for it. And I would sit here with a headset on, and the computer would automatically dial people. And I would go
Mm-hmm.
through this written script about, um, trying to make them buy life insurance. And one of the
Yeah.
questions was, what type of legacy would you like to leave to your family?
Wow.
And it was supposed to be a financial question,
Of course.
but
Yeah.
people didn't take it that way. And they would say, well,
Mm.
when my husband died, I remember him for being, XYZ. So,
Yeah.
and I said, oh, well, tell me about your husband. And then
Oh.
completely off track, we would start talking about, we would talk about their loved one. And
Yeah.
I realized just over and over again throughout the day, that's what I enjoyed doing, was talking to people about their loss.
Yeah.
And the woman that ran the insurance company was a life coach. And not being very familiar with coaching, I wondered, is there a death coach? Is there some other modality that where I could actually turn this into a career, because I love it so much and I'm used to doing it. This is like second nature to me. So I went online and found Grief Coach, and then I found a program for a certification course, and I signed up for that. So that was how I ended up doing that, and it was the right path. I couldn't ask for a better transition. It has been just as wonderful as when I worked at the funeral home, as far as the gratitude of my clients and watching their transition from start to finish is really remarkable.
And what a beautiful transition. Like when you think of, you know, you were obviously told quite clearly that there's a time to look after yourself. And then this tiny little transition piece, that little puzzle piece of the life insurance job that you really didn't like, but you figured out what you actually liked through that, which I always love when you come across something where like, wow, this is so not me, but it was meant to happen for you to transition to the next step. And it's really funny because we already have, we already have so many parallels, like with the naming. And my step into coaching was through a sales job as well. And they invited me to come along to one of their seminars that they did, like a weekend seminar, all expenses paid for, just come along. We want you to see what we do. So if you like it, you can have the job. And I went to this seminar not knowing anything about what they do. And it was all about self-development and coaching. And I was like, I don't want to do sales. I want to do that. And instead of taking the job, I signed up for their course. Maybe that was the trick. No, I don't think so. But anyway, I signed up for their course, went into coaching, and then they offered me to become one of their master coaches. And I was like, no, thanks. I'm starting my own business. I just, you know, it was really interesting. And that was through a sales job that I was like, oh, I'm not passionate, but, you know, I just need to do something for now. And so I stumbled into that.
There's so many, these pathways are so interesting to hear how they lead you to where you're supposed to be.
Yeah, I absolutely love it. So before we get too sidetracked now about sales and anything else, I really want to bring it to our actual topic today. So in this whole idea of like when you dropped this for the first time, when we had our chat on Zoom a couple of days ago, and you said post-traumatic growth, I'm like, oh my God, we need to talk about this. This is just such a beautiful topic because everybody, when it comes to grief, to loss, talks about PTSD and post-traumatic stress and how to overcome it. Can you overcome it? What's the best way? And most people associate PTSD with the military, with people that have been in the war, have worked in the army, have watched their comrades die and really struggle with finding their way back into a normal life. And it is a huge, huge topic. However, it doesn't stop, or it's not just within the army. It is actually a really, really big topic overall with anybody who has experienced any sort of trauma in their life. But with our group here being Loving Love After Loss, for today, we don't want to focus on the stress, on the disease, disorder, whatever people might put their labels on it or name it really, because it's not just a label, it's an actual thing. But we want to focus on the post-traumatic growth part. And this is what really, really caught my attention because I'm all up for that. As you know, my whole life, my everything, my whole group is dedicated to growth, to healing. So where did that first enter your life, that whole topic of post-traumatic growth? And tell us a little bit about that, Teisha, because I'm really, really pumped to talk about that with you today.
Yeah, I was actually chatting with another grief coach, and we were talking about trauma. And she said, have you ever heard of post-traumatic growth? No, I haven't. And even hearing the term, I thought, this is something I need to learn more about.
Yeah.
And she recommended a workbook, and I purchased a workbook, and I went a little bit further, and I purchased another book, which is such a great book. It's called What Doesn't Kill Us, by Stephen Joseph. And he
Yeah.
goes into, he's a psychiatrist, and he goes into several stories about people that have persevered through their trauma into growth. He goes through
Yeah.
statistics. He goes through different tools that could be
Mm-hmm.
used to help a client achieve those results.
Yeah.
But you know, this is what we do as coaches, right?
Mm-hmm.
We assess the grief, getting to know the client. We find out where they are in their grief process.
Yeah.
We help them work through the things that are bothering them, the
Mm-hmm.
the trauma, if
Yeah.
you will. I mean, I've always thought that grief and PTSD should be treated the same way. This is a traumatic event that has happened in your life. You
Yeah.
have lost the most important person in your life.
Mm.
And where do you go from there? Is there
Yeah.
is there a forward movement to that? But as
Mm-hmm.
coaches, we talk through the hard times, give them advice on what they could do to work through that.
Mm-hmm.
And then we teach, we don't teach, I can't say we teach people, but we guide them into moving forward.
Yeah.
And that is the growth. So
Yeah.
I realized this strong association between grief coaching and post-traumatic growth. There's so
Yeah.
many misconceptions when it comes to post-traumatic stress disorder.
Yeah.
It's it's a response, just like
Mm.
grief is nothing more than a response to loss.
Yeah.
Trauma is a response to an adverse event.
Mm.
They sound a lot alike.
Yeah.
And
There are a lot of parallels, definitely.
absolutely. And
Mm.
there's also a misconception that post-traumatic stress disorder is a lifelong condition.
Mm.
It's not supposed to be a lifelong condition. There
Yeah.
should be healing at
Yeah.
some point after that. And it
Mm.
takes time for it to develop into uh, the classification of a PTSD.
Yeah.
But it really shouldn't last for a period of longer than maybe 6 months.
Yeah.
But you're
And
seeing
I
soldiers.
also want to say something about this, teacher, before everybody jumps on and goes like, whoa, you can't tell me that I need to be healed after 6 months. No, that's not what we're talking
No,
about here. I think everything in life that is pain related, whether that be emotional or physical, if it's not treated, it will last. You know, it's the whole idea of assessing it, seeing what the pain is, the issue is, the challenge is, the downfall is, the stacking point. I don't know if that's even a word, I'm just making it up as I go. The point where you really feel like you get stuck and you can't get past that, to assess that and then help you with tools, with perspective shifts, with healing. And that is what we're talking about here. Is that right? Not as in 6 months, where if you wait through it, it'll be over. It's not the
no,
waiting through. It's not the period of 6 months. It is not supposed to be a lifelong condition if you do assess it and get help with it. Is that right?
exactly. Yes, yes. I mean, the 6 month thing is, I should have said that a little bit better. Um, According to studies, PTSD should not be it shouldn't go on for years necessarily. Um, you know, it's a
Yeah.
condition that should be relatively temporary, but it's
Yeah.
not. And
Yeah.
I feel like it's because a lot of therapists are not necessarily on the up and up when it comes to new psychology.
Yeah.
Post-traumatic growth came about in the late 1990s,
Mm-hmm.
and not even, I saw a therapist a few months ago. She'd never heard of it, and she was a young woman,
Wow.
and
Mm.
it was nothing that she had ever been taught.
Mm.
So yeah, I definitely don't want to get that confused. I think in the beginning part of grief and the beginning part of a traumatic event, you are in survival mode.
Yeah.
You are just trying to get through the day,
Yeah.
process your emotions and how you feel. That is perfectly normal. That's something you do have to go through.
Mm.
However, if it gets to that point a couple of months down the road where you're crying all day long, you're thinking about possibly the way your loved one died, that keeps what I call a trauma loop going on in the head, because you're still trying to comprehend why your loved one isn't here. You know, she went to the store to get some bread and a car T-boned her and she spun out of control and the car flipped and she hit her head and had traumatic brain injury. And so your mind kind of goes into this rewind to process, to comprehend why the person isn't here anymore. And you and I talked about that a little bit the other night.
Yeah.
And usually for me, I know it's different for everybody, but when I step in as a grief coach, usually that is the predominant thought process that the person is stuck with. They don't know how to move past that.
Yeah.
And that's, you know, when I would step in and try to coach them out of that and have them think a little bit differently, because through the whole thing, also, it changes your thought patterns. Thought patterns tend to change where you think grief is going to last you forever. So you start preparing for this to never go away. You think, I'm going to feel this way. If I'm not crying, I'm not actively grieving, then that means I'm all better and I'm not sad anymore that my loved one is gone.
Yeah.
You could laugh and still be sad.
Yeah.
You
And
know,
it's
give
also
yourself
like,
permission to.
the one thing that I'm always quite big about is that it's not only socially accepted that there is the grief, there's the pain. Society doesn't really offer us a lot of tools, a lot of help when it comes to that. It's socially accepted that you lose someone and you grieve, and you'll be stuck in sadness for a long time, or sometimes even forever, depending on the cultures. And I had this conversation with my brother-in-law, when we talked about when I met someone and I began a new relationship in my life, and we had this chat about how my in-laws reacted about it, and I knew it would hurt them. I knew that because it's their son that passed, and it's a very, very different cultural background as well. And he said to me, Marie, it's the Italian background. They expect you to, grieve for at least 10 years. And, it was a really interesting conversation that we had there. And I'm saying that with a whole lot of respect, because I absolutely dearly love my in-laws. And it's not just a fact that it's socially acceptable, it's actually expected by society that you grieve for at least a year, if not longer, depending on culture, and that you fall apart. And I had so many moments after Rob passed where people stopped me on the street with a really sad face and like, how are you coping? And I was like, well, I'm actually all right. And I almost felt apologetic for feeling good, and I'm like, why do I feel like that? I'm not supposed to feel apologetic because I'm doing great. I actually embrace it. I actually want to feel like that. And this is a promise that I made to Rob before he passed. Of course, when we talked about it, it was theory, but we both said, if something was to ever happen to you, I want you to live a happy life. We both said that to each other. I'm like, this is my chance. I need to do this, not just for myself, but for our boys. Of course, it wasn't easy. It was nothing that happened overnight and I switched to happy and everything was great. It was something that I worked on every single day. It was a choice I made every single day. But society doesn't expect that of you. They actually expect the opposite. They expect you to fall apart, and it's socially acceptable. So that's that loop that keeps you stuck in that suffering, which is actually not necessary. It is absolutely normal that it happens for a certain amount of time. And as you said, you can be sad and happy at the same time. And eventually, if you allow it and if you choose it, the happiness will grow bigger and bigger and will take over. But it doesn't mean that you don't honor your loved ones anymore, or that you've forgotten about them, or that you don't love them anymore. And that is where I feel that there's a huge letdown from society. I'm not sure what your experience with that is, but that's my experience, how I went through that. So if you don't mind me asking, Teisha, because I know we wanted to actually ask that question before we got onto this topic, but do you mind sharing a little bit about your personal background in terms of losses, what your experience was? Is that okay if I ask you that?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, my first loss was actually my grandmother when I was about 10 years old. And I remember after my grandmother passed away, my father was crying. And I knew why he was crying. I understood.
Yeah.
All I wanted to do was help him. I just instinctually, I was just a little kid, but I was trying to think of words that would comfort him, or giving him a hug, or some way of consoling him. But as I grew older, I lost my mother when I was 32 years old. And that hit me very hard, because she was the first person that was very close to me that I had lost. And it took me a very long time to get to an okay place without her in my life. And I didn't seek any type of help. I figured, well, this is it. There's people go through this all the time, and I just have to live with my feelings and my grief. And I did actively grieve probably for about a year. No, it was 2 years, because I remember 2 years to the day I started feeling somewhat okay again. And then my stepfather, her companion, died. And then it's just been sort of a domino effect recently in my family. I lost two uncles, my dear grandfather who helped raise me, my grandmother in September, and then my aunt just at the end of November recently. But the way I reacted was a lot different, because I feel like I know how to manage my emotions better now, where I go, when my aunt died, I was very sad, but I thought, just immediately my thought was, I'm going to make her life have purpose. And I'm going to write a book. I'm going to write a book about grief, and it's going to be dedicated to her and also my grandmother. And when my grandmother died, I felt immediately that her life was bigger than the loss of her.
Yeah.
You know, the memories she left me with, the things that she had taught me, how lucky I was to have this woman as a grandmother my whole life, was more powerful than her not being here anymore. So I have found these coping skills, you know, throughout the years that have worked very well for me, because I agree with you, Marie, that a lot of this is a choice. It is in your mindset, and it's creating a different behavior. It's creating this state of gratitude within your loss, instead of this poor little me, I don't have this person in my life anymore, and I'll never be the same. These, you know, sort of thought ceilings, as I call them, where you don't think there's anything beyond. those
I
emotions.
love that you say that, because this is such a valid point. I really want to highlight that, that I will never be the same. So many people say that in a negative way, pardon me to say that frankly, in a victim sort of way. And when you look into those grief support groups, where there's all about the suffering, the loss, the tragedy, rather than the healing and the health and the hope and the happiness and all these beautiful H words. And a lot of people, it's a sentence that is used over and over again, as in, my life will never be the same. Well, of course not. Life per se is change, but it is so often used in a victim sort of way, in a negative sort of way, in a resigning sort of way, where it may as well be taken in a creative sort of way. And just bear with me, like, before everybody jumps on and goes like, how dare you? I don't think people will do it in this group, but I know this interview will be shared outside of this group as well. And a lot of people go like, how dare you? How on earth can you even say that? Well, every adversity in life is a turning point, and it's up to you to choose where you want your life to go after that. I'm not saying don't grieve. I'm not saying, for God's sake, I'm not saying don't be sad. It's all part of this. It's all part of adversity. It's part of normal human reaction, response, emotions. It's all part of the package. However, where our life goes to afterwards is our choice. And life is constant change. Some of those milestones are a lot more abrupt and unexpected, and might put a huge turn in our tracks where we didn't expect it to turn. I totally get that. I've lived through it multiple times. Yet it is up to us. People always say, well, I don't have a choice in this. I didn't choose to lose my husband, my child, my grandmother, my father, my aunt, whoever that was in your life. Of course not. Yet you have a choice in how you respond to it, and what you allow into your life, and who you allow to support you. If you have, we call it in the coaching lingo, the surrounding influences, are your surrounding influences, the people that surround you and influence you, like workmates, family, friends, are they supportive of your growth, or are they supportive of your stress disorder, if that makes sense? When it comes to post-traumatic, are they supportive of the stress disorder, or are they supportive of the growth? And that will show you instantly. My advice is always like, choose wisely who you allow into your life, whose advice you allow into your heart, because this is a two-way street. It's the one question that I want everybody to ask themselves, whether they're the ones giving the advice or receiving it. Is this advice going to help? Is this advice going to heal? Yes or no? If it's not, then don't give it, or don't let it in. And if it is, awesome. Give it, let it in. It's perfect. That's how simple it is. Is this going to help me heal? And that's the only question that you need to ask yourself. It's just really our choice. Again, what do we allow in? And be brave, be bold. Stand up and go like, you know what? I do not need this right now. Or I need a break. You don't need to cut people out of your life, but just tell them nicely, I just need a break right now. I need to be by myself with this for now, and it's absolutely fine. So,
right.
Yeah.
And that ties in perfectly with post-traumatic growth, because if you do have those positive influences in your life that are going to even talk to you as, you could be the victim.
Yeah.
You could be the survivor, or you could be the thriver. And the survivor and the thriver are actually doing better than they were before the loss occurred.
Yeah.
And it's quite possible to find your purpose in life through a death of a loved one. Several people have done that. I mean, you're an example of that. You decided to use your intelligence and your knowledge that you already had, but push it so much further to say, I'm not alone here. Other women have lost their husband. There's a large community that needs help, and I have the tools to help people move forward and experience a growth because it happened to you. You know, it happened to me. And not only that, but it actually didn't even happen to me until I learned about this.
Yeah, wow.
For years, I had been a victim of some things that had happened to me. I, I mentioned my medical condition, and I've been through 9 abdominal surgeries, and just very ill for most of my adult life. And when I think about the hospital and recovery, I feel victimized. I feel like this was something that happened to me, and I I victimized myself. I mean, pure and simple, and thought of the hospital as a place that would trigger my trauma. And for a long time, I had avoided hospitals and getting proper checkups. Once I learned about the growth, I thought, I'm a survivor of this. I'm alive. And I made it through all of this, and I persevered. And this, I could be an example to someone else who's going through it right now, to let them understand that life could be even fuller than it was had I not gone through that experience. A lot of it, and I also practice mindfulness, and that is a wonderful practice to get into if you're struggling with trauma. And that alone really changed my mindset. I learned that last year, completely changed my life. And that's another sign of growth, is when you start to think differently and put yourself in the moment. When you're in the moment constantly, you're not thinking about the tragic past, nor are you foreseeing a difficult time in the future. You're safe, you're in the now, you're in the moment, and you're taking in everything around you, and noticing a blooming flower or a bird that's flying by. You become more present, and you appreciate what's in front
so much. Yeah. And it's such a simple tool. I often, like, somebody said that once. I would love to quote this person. I don't know who it was, but I picked this up and I absolutely loved it. The fear is never in the now. It's always in the future or based on an experience we had in the past. But when you're just in the now, there is no fear. And it's so true. It's always a projection of, well, for me, it was a huge thing. I think the biggest hurdle for me to work through after the past was my immense fear that something could happen to one of my boys. And it was triggered even more so when I first started loving life after loss. And I had this limiting thought, limiting belief, like we call it in the coaching lingo, of, well, okay, I'm starting this group. I've got my experience I lost my grandmother. I watched her pass away in our house when I was 12. I lost my dad when I was 20, and now my husband. And my biggest fear was for somebody to come into this group and say, well, I've lost my child. You've got no idea what that feels like. That it gets into this comparison, but you haven't experienced this, so how can you help me? That was my biggest fear. I'm being absolutely vulnerable, raw, and open here about this. That was my biggest fear when I first started the group. And guess what? It made my fear about my kids or one of my kids passing heaps bigger, because I thought, oh my God, what if that is now well, there you go. Here's your experience. Now you know how to deal with it. I'm like, oh my God, just don't even do this. I was driving myself nuts with this fear, with this question, with my downward spiral around how I thought about it, till one day I thought, you know what? No, I'm not going to let this drive me or rule me. I'm not going to allow this thought, this fear to have power over me, because my whole energy will be drained and will go into this. So I decided to just go ahead anyway and do it and start this group. And I often say it felt like jumping off a cliff and growing my wings on the way down when I first started it. And then I had the beautiful Terry Madison Davis, everybody knows her in this group, come into my group, connect with me on such a deep level. She's a really, really dear friend to me nowadays. She's been through literally all of my programs, and she has lost her son. And I said that to her many times, and just recently as well, that I have so much gratitude for her being sent into my life to not only help her heal and help her on her journey. She had a tremendous turnaround and shift in her journey. She has healed so much. I know the world will hear so much from her. She's only just at the beginning of the, spreading her beautiful energy and her healing into the world, and let the world be affected by it, because she's now transformed through her own journey. And it was also such a gift for me to realize, see, I don't have to go through this experience myself to help other people, because at the end of the day, all that I do in this group is listen, hold their hands, shift their perspectives, and allow them to change their thinking around what happened. Because the beautiful and very simple example, how you can shift that, it's a very, very basic example. So many people are like, well, is there even a purpose for me in life? Well, rather than asking that, if you just shift it slightly and go, look, what is my purpose now? That
Absolutely.
puts your mind into creative mode, into thinking mode, into, wow, opening up. What is my purpose now? That puts you on the path of finding it, rather than, is there even a purpose? That's resigning. That's like giving up already,
You have to
So
find
those little shifts. Yeah.
Yeah, you have to find a purpose and a reason, and set a daily intention, and always move forward. It takes work,
and a decision.
and a decision. Yeah. Like I heard something recently, it says time heals nothing, but what you do with the time is what heals.
Yeah.
And it's so simple, but it's so true. It's what you do with the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So instead of going years and years, you could work on yourself for years and years. And that's a beautiful thing. I think we're all a work in progress, and we all need to do better tomorrow than what we did today. And
I agree with that. Time heals nothing. I always say that it's not the time that heals your wounds, it's your decision, and you're actively choosing to allowing it into your life. The allowing part is really huge in the topic of grief, allowing healing to come into your life and allowing joy back in, happiness back in. That's a really big thing, and it all starts with one decision every single day. You can make this tiny decision every single day, and it will grow. It's really beautiful.
I know. I was working with a client the other night, and we had a wonderful session, and we were laughing and carrying on. And toward the end of the session, we did a gratitude exercise. And it said, what are you grateful for today? And she says, oh, this is such a tough question. I said, what are you talking about? I said, we have had a great time in this last hour. Wouldn't you agree? We've been laughing, and you're doing good right now. The next moment, you may not, but right now in this moment, it's a good one. And she said, you're right. I am okay now. So she wrote it down, and she said, but am I allowed to feel this way?
Yeah.
She didn't think she was allowed to feel good and still miss her husband. And I said, absolutely. He's still there. He's laughing. When you laugh, he's laughing with you.
And he would want you to be happy. That's a big part,
Exactly. And you could still have that connection with your loved one, whether you're crying or whether you're laughing. And I do have to say that the people who don't seek any type of help or talk to people or open up or try to do better, and they're closed in and grieving so hard, I feel after a period of time, it's actually a dishonor to their loved one. Personally, I would not like for someone to grieve for me and cry. I want someone to smile when they think about me.
And celebrate my life.
Yeah, celebrate my life, you know, and that's what we do during the funeral ceremony. We're all doing it. We're all experiencing a bit of post-traumatic growth when we hold a funeral and a eulogy is spoken and songs are played and words of remembrance are given. It's all in love and gratitude for the person that died. So we all have that in us, and we all know that that is the send-off we would give to our loved ones. So why not celebrate that in the weeks and months to come?
I love that you say that, Teisha. I absolutely love it, because I really feel that there needs to be, I'm honestly saying this, there needs to be a lot more fun and happiness and joy being shared at the funerals, because it needs to be a celebration of life and not the focus just on the loss, which often happens at the funeral. And I know that I started my eulogy with a joke. That was my opening line. I didn't even plan to, it just happened because I could not read the eulogy without reading glasses. And there was this funny story that happened before where I couldn't find my reading glasses. And I was like, oh my God, how am I going to read the eulogy if I can't see it? You know, so I started the whole thing with a joke, because Rob would always say little old lady, and he made it sound like a yodeling noise when I could not see anything without reading glasses. And I said that out loud there, you know, I can hear Rob say that to me. And I put a couple of jokes in a eulogy as well. And it was really nice. It was light and nobody expected that, you know. So it really helped everyone there to, it gave them this allowing to celebrate and be joyful. And the celebration that we had afterwards, there was so much laughter, so much joy, so many beautiful stories shared. It really warmed my heart. I didn't expect that. And it made me so happy. I did not expect to be happy at my husband's funeral. I didn't expect it. It was so beautiful. And I know that Shalina, I'm not sure if she's still live watching this, Shalina did a party instead of, or as a funeral, not instead of, it was a party for her husband, because that's who he was. He was all about jokes and fun. And she did that in a big, I can't remember what it was, but it was just so beautiful and I loved it. And she said, so much so that many people ask her afterwards, like, so when's the actual funeral going to be? And she's like, that's it. That's it. You know, that's the celebration of Bruce's life. And I thought that was so beautiful, because it was so him. And I'm talking as if I know him already, because Shalene has shared so much about her husband that I feel like I had known him. And I just want to read this out as well, because Terry said, Marie, it's because of you and loving life after loss that I'm where I am today. I absolutely love this, Terry. Thank you so much. And I'm so grateful that you're part of this, because Terry and Shalina, by the way, are also part of my moderator team, because they've been with me from more or less from the beginning. So I love it. This is part of my daily gratitude. Yes. And yeah, Shalina, I'm here. It was a fabulous party. Awesome. I just absolutely love that you did that, Shalina. Yeah, I'm actually certain that nobody will ever with tequila nobody will ever forget this party. You know, it's just something that I'm absolutely certain that it's exactly what Bruce would have wanted. And that to me is so much more important than what society expects of you, or what society expects us to do at a funeral, at, you know, in our grieving journey. There are so many wrong expectations that really dictate us. And I'm putting it out there, you know, with Teisha on my side, because I know we are completely on the same page with that. It is up to you to choose what you do with it. Don't let society dictate you and how fast, how deep you have to grieve, how much you have to fall apart. You can choose to focus on happiness and to focus on the beautiful memories of the person that has passed in your life, and bring that forward and celebrate that, because there's enough reason to celebrate. You know, it's our choice really what we do with that. Teisha, I want to bring one more question back to you in terms of post-traumatic growth, because without preparation, we both know that it's quite confronting to bring this topic into a healing journey. So tell us a little bit about your process or your steps prior to that. How do you actually suggest that when you work with people in their healing journey, how do you bring this concept of post-traumatic growth into their healing journey when they come and work with you?
Well, it depends on whether or not it's prominent within that for that person, if they actually feel traumatized by the death of their loved one. Most people are. So like I said, and it's almost common cognitive behavioral therapy where first we talk, we assess the situation, we understand their thoughts and feelings around the circumstance, and then we address the action that took place. And then we get into their reaction to the loss and help them react in a healthy, proper way that will inspire healing. And again, it's all about helping them move forward. So once we get through sort of the meat of what is really at their heart, that's the thought that is making them cry all the time, the thought that is keeping them from picking up the phone and reaching out to a friend or a family member. We work through those obstacles, and there's so many different tools to give to a client to move them into the period of growth. And eventually, and that would be where our relationship ends, is when they have gotten to the point where they have found a new purpose in life and they have grown exponentially from their loss. Some of the tools would be maybe just a self-compassion letter, going back to that moment where they were faced making very important decisions, and going back and giving themselves a hug and comforting them and bringing them into the now and saying, look, girl, you made it. You survived the death of your husband, and you're here in the now. And how you decide to create your moment is absolutely up to you. And it could be any feeling you want to feel right now. And give them back the power. So many people feel imprisoned and held back as if they have no control over the situation. It has happened, and yes, you can't go back and fix it. But again, your reaction to it is what you can help. You could help yourself, and you deserve the best life possible going forward. And we simply serve as guides to help them get through their difficulties. And when they get to that point, finally, let them go and release them into their new life that they very well deserve. That's all I could say about it, really. It's
beautiful.
And I hope grief coaching gets more recognition, that people know that we're out here to help in this manner. There's a start and an end to our working with a client. It's not these 2-year, 3-year, 5-year, relationships that go on forever. It's for a short period of time, and there's amazing transformation that happens during that time period.
I see that quite often, like in my group, when you say the relationship ends, for me, that's often where the relationship starts, but it's like the coaching relationship ends, and then there's this friendship that comes out of it, with a lot of people in this group, and in particular, the ones that are watching online now, Terry, Shalina, and then they become your moderators, and because they're such beautiful examples of growth, how they've come through their own adversity, and that they have chosen to do something about that. They've chosen to allow love and happiness back into their lives, and the transformation is incredible. So I literally put it out there to them and said, how would you feel about helping me moderate the group? And I've got 5 people now that jumped up and said, yeah, I'd absolutely love that. And they're doing a fantastic job in helping me, because there's close to 3,000 people in this group now. and I could not possibly get on top of all the questions and answers they have. So for me, it is such a blessing with everything that I give in this group to have people put their hand up and give back, not just to the group, but also to me. And it is an absolute blessing. And I count my blessings every single day in this group, how many people jump up and help hold space for people that need to be listened to, that need somebody to catch them from falling and say, you know, you've come to the right place. You're here because we want to support you and love you through this. And with that being said, because I know we are pretty much at the end of our time here, Teisha, I would love for you, when we finish this interview, if you could jump back and go into the comments of our interview here. And if you could please share a link or two where people can actually connect with you. If people have any questions, if people want to touch base with you, connect with you, you can share your social media handles, your Facebook page, your whatever you have, where people can reach out to you, connect with you. Or if it's okay with you, if they send you a private message, that's fine, to like whatever you want people to do to connect with you. Just please put that handle or link in the group, in the comments below this interview, so people don't have to go around search for it. It's literally in the comments below. And yeah, any final words from you, Teisha?
You know, just keep moving, everyone, keep moving forward. Your group is so beneficial. Keep reaching out. There's so much support, even from people that are going through the same thing as you. Sometimes they're the best ones to assist you. And just keep telling your story. Keep telling your story. And also be the storyteller to your loved one. You have that obligation. You knew your husband better than anyone, and you're still here on earth to tell his story and keep him alive in memory. You could very well find your purpose in life just by being a storyteller.
And also be wise in your joys. You know, just because people have gone through the same thing with you doesn't mean that they're a positive influence on your journey. You know, just be mindful of whether they're actually helping you heal and support you through that, or if they drag you back down because that's where they are stuck and can't get out. So just a little word of warning around that. You're really clear on these people walking the same path with you. Are they actually here to help or to hinder you from growth? So that's the only question I would like to add to that. Teisha, you've been amazing. Thank you so much for spending this 1 hour here. If anybody wants to connect with Teisha, she is in our Facebook group under Teacher. So you'll see it when she actually posts the links, who she is. And Terry, lovely Teisha, thank you so much for your interview and sharing so much, an awesome 1 hour with you both. I love your, I have to click on see more. I love your work. Thank you so much, Terry. Thank you everyone for watching. Thank you everybody who's watching the replay. Please put the hashtag replay if you catch that later and not live right now. And Teisha, thank you so much for your time and energy and your beautiful wisdom that you have shared with us. I absolutely love your story. So thank you for being here.
Thank you, Marie.
Bye everyone. See you soon.